Well, hello there, and welcome to today's session. It's going to be, as you always know, very informative. But before we get into it, I really would appreciate it if you would like, share, and subscribe with this video, and leave a comment in the comment section. It really helps. All right, let's get into today's session. Now, depending on where you are joining us from around the world, if you are in South Africa, it is graduation season, which means people are graduating from degrees that they earned last year. And it also means application season. June, the application portals for most universities now open up. Now, today's session, I want to talk to the one who's been thinking about going back to school, the one who's been debating whether or not they should take up that opportunity to actually leave everything behind and go back to the classroom or enroll for that online course or take up that scholarship opportunity or the opportunity to actually move to another country. Today's session is about the person who did it the first time, who already got the degree and got the job, or is struggling to get the job after getting the degree, and they are thinking, should I go back to school? Would that help me? Today's session is for you. Now, as someone who has also taken the jump, I took the jump in 2024 to leave my work behind and actually say I am going back to school for the next phase of my life. I feel as though we can have this discussion today because I understand the doubt, the anxiety, the planning, the stress that comes with all of it. It is not a decision that can be made overnight. And it is not something that, only requires you to just decide and then get up and get it done. Most people do want to go back to school. The deciding part is not the issue. It is the execution part. That is what I want us to talk about today. Where do we start? How do we get it done? And how do we move forward? So if you have stayed with us so far, it means you have a plan or at least a yearning to go back to school or to take up an opportunity in another country or basically just move and, do something that may look like a setback, but it's actually going to propel you forward. That is a brave decision, first of all. Not everyone can take that decision. So how do we get you to a point whereby you are able to execute said decision? And it all starts with planning. The deciding part is already done, remember? Now we have to plan. How do we do it? Unfortunately, most people get stuck in this stage. They only get stuck in the planning stage. It's hard for them to now move to the next stage. And that is what the session is going to be about. It's going to help you decide if you're able to move to the next phase. So, how do we start the planning? Firstly, why have you decided to go to school? Usually our whys is the reason or the motivator that we need to help us move forward. Are you not happy with your job? Would you like to take up a promotion? Would you like to change careers? Do you feel stuck? All of your answers to those questions are your reason why. That why will keep you motivated. Once you have realized your why, it will then help you decide the when, right? Now that you know your why, you have to decide on the when and the way. When I say the when is, like I said earlier in my introduction, it is application season. So maybe right now you're thinking I should apply, which means if I apply now, then I have to start up my studies in January of 2027. So that would be the when. Or if I'm now thinking of moving overseas, for some universities overseas, they have summer intakes, which is our winter, around September or July. So you could find yourself having to move even earlier or having to wait a whole year. But the when will definitely be decided after you have your why. And now, most importantly, the way. You need to now look at places. How am I going to do this? Am I doing it physically, meaning I have to quit my job and then take up physical classes? Or can I do it online through your UNISA, through your online universities? Where exactly am I doing this? Or am I also moving overseas? Where am I actually going with this? And then, of course, you have to do your how. Now, the how, unfortunately, is usually what keeps people grounded. How exactly am I going to do this? How am I going to finance it? How am I going to leave a stable job and move across the country or move across the continent or even move across the world to go and chase in pursuit of this new plan? How will I live? How will I sustain myself? How will I do all of these things that I want? Because like I said, deciding, sorry about that, deciding and yearning for the decision to do it is the easy part. The where, the how, the why, and all of that are what will help us move to the new plan. So you need to come up with a plan. You need to sit down and say, depending on what fields I'm in, whether it's engineering, health, um, marketing, it doesn't really matter. Every department has a way in which it operates. So, for example, with the way, if you want to do marketing, you will find that there are better universities within the Southern continent region, Southern African continent region. You don't really need to move to the United States because the way that they do marketing over there could be different from here. Same goes for law, for example. If you do American law, you may find that it might be difficult for you to then come back home because American law and South African law and Swazi law, Botswana law, Lesotho law, all these laws are different. So be very, very careful when you're doing your research to say, am I just gathering another degree, or is what I'm doing really actually going to benefit me in the long run in my career? Now, as we are talking about plan, I need you to be very clear about your long-term plan. When you are planning in terms of, I want to go back to school, I need to get my MBA, or I need to do my master's, or I need to do my PhD, and all of those things, have you done the research to determine if really that path will help you get to the next stage? Given the way that the economy is, and given the way that the job market is, sometimes getting an extra degree will not guarantee that you will indeed get another job. Now, let me make an example. Like I said, I went back to school myself. Me going back to school in Swaziland, I had a private practice. So, me going back to school meant shutting down my private practice because I can't see clients and still be at school. And the reason why I did that is that in as much as seeing private clients was stable, it also could not help me move to the next part of my life. And that required me to actually go back to school and acknowledge the fact that for me to be able to do, whether it's being a professor, publish, and all of those things, I need my PhD. And after I get my PhD, am I looking at employment, or am I still going back to private practice? Right. So some people may think getting a master's degree will mean it will open opportunities. Sometimes the opportunities are not there. Yes, a master's degree will look good on paper, but the opportunities are just not there. So now you are sitting with this master's degree, you're sitting with this PhD, and it's very difficult for people to employ you or for now to move forward in that department, because why? You are now overqualified. They just don't have the resources. So for me, I say, yes, go back to school, but let's have a long-term plan. Are you planning on coming back to the same organization, whereby you have had a conversation with the HR department and you've had a conversation with anyone that needs to be had a conversation, the CEO and the MD, and they have explicitly said, if you were to get your MBA, then you can become CEO or COO or whatever, but within the company you have now ways of doing it. At least now you have a sure plan that says, once I have this paper, either I can move up within this business, within this organization, or I have the opportunity to move to another organization where there's an opening, or where I see there are constantly openings, but they need this qualification and I just don't have it. So I have to go back to school, get the qualification, and then the next time they're hiring, I will be in a better position to do that. So it's very important for us to actually look at the long-term plan, because if we don't, we'll find ourselves with so many qualifications and nowhere to take them. So our long-term plan, once you come back in 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, or however long it's going to take for you to go back to school, then what? Where are you going to go with that? Now, I'm not saying this to discourage you. I just want us to be very vigilant with our due diligence. There are so many departments or so many fields of study whereby a PhD really will not help you with much. Because I'm speaking from experience, things that I've actually had a conversation with. And if you think the information I'm giving is wrong, please let us know in the comment section. But you will find that a PhD in tourism, for example, will really not get you far. Whereas a PhD in psychology or a PhD in journalism will now give you the opportunity to become a professor, to write your own books, to have your own, classes and all of those things. Those two PhDs are very different. So you have to look at it and do the research. And by doing the research, I don't just mean go on Google. I mean talk to actual human beings who are in the field. A lot of us have trusted AI and Google way too much. And if there's one thing I can tell you about those platforms, they are affirmative platforms, which means when you go on them and say, it wouldn't be a good idea for me to leave everything behind and just go and live on in a desert. They will probably say that is a great idea, but let's make a plan on how that works. Right? Whereas when you speak to an actual human being, they will tell you that's not the best idea. I wouldn't advise you to go there. I wouldn't advise you to do that. Why? Because they've been in the field for a very long time. They know how it works, they know how to maneuver it, and they know what opportunities are there. So speak to as many people as you possibly can. It doesn't have to be one person. Speak to someone who has a master's degree, speak to someone who has a PhD, speak to someone who's still in the degree level. Find out what opportunities are still available and would it make sense for you, on top of you doing your Google Scholar and all of those things, of course. Okay, so you've done your research, you have spoken to everyone that you need to speak to. Would it be best for you to go back to school physically or can you do it online? You have done that and it's all systems go. It would be a good idea for you to go back to school and it would help you in the long run. Now we are going back to our plan, the how now. Okay, which means finances most of the time. How do I finance this? Most of us are already at work or we are still trying to find a job, but we've got responsibilities. Rent is due. Children, for some of us who have children, their school fees is due. There's food every day that needs to be bought at home, and so many other responsibilities that we have. So now you are thinking to yourself, how can I do this? And the good thing about it is that in most departments, there are scholarships, and I will leave a link in the description box of where different scholarships can be found, with different scholarship portals and everything. But I would say try and find scholarships or someone to sponsor you. In other people's lives, they find that their jobs can sponsor them. So, for example, you work for ABC organization, and ABC organization says, we want to hire within house a COO or a CFO. Because we already want someone who knows the company, someone that understands how we work. We can't really afford to bring someone from outside because that means onboarding and everything that we're just not willing to spend time on. So maybe they will open it up to the employees here and say accounting department or operations department. There's going to be a vacancy for a COO or a CFO respectively. If any of you can come back with a master's degree or an MBA or a PhD within the next 2 to 3 years, then you'd be eligible for that position. So you'd find that those companies are even willing to pay for you to go to school as long as you come back and then do the work here. So find those opportunities out. What are the education opportunities for my organization? Do you guys pay for people to go to school? What are the terms and conditions? What do I have to give up? What am I tying myself to, basically? Because if you are going to take up those opportunities, you have to be prepared to be with that company for as long as those terms determine. So, for example, some companies will say, we will send you back to school. And if it's a 4-year degree or a 5-year degree, then you have to spend time within the company for the next 4 to 5 years. So even if another opportunity opens up in another company, you can't leave because you have to pay back their money. Those are their terms and their conditions. So the research part is the reason why most people get stuck, because you have so much information that you have to consume. And there's so many things that we don't look at. We just want to go back to school and just we'll figure everything out that side. But this part is very, very important, especially if you're an adult who's already working and has so many responsibilities. You cannot run the risk of doing something that will later on come back and bite you. So do your due diligence, do your research, talk to people, find out. And if the company does not pay for you, then there are scholarships. They may not be full scholarships, but they could be partial scholarships whereby they will pay £1,000 for every 12,000 pound course that you will do. And then you have to now figure out, how am I financing this? Scholarship plus a personal loan from the bank plus savings that I have made plus. You may find that it is doable. It may not be easy, but it is doable. Why? Because you've taken the time to actually plan, sit down with your accountant, sit down with everyone that needs that has the information, and you have figured it out. This is how I am actually going to do it. Now, speaking about the how, as much as you may have figured out the financial part, there's also one part that is very, very important, and that is the support of your family. Some of us are married, some of us have partners, some of us are still single. It doesn't really matter where you are, but it does matter who is with you where you are. Okay, so a decision to go back to school requires a conversation with someone who's supporting you. It could be your parents, it could be your wife, it could be your husband, it could be your children, because that will require them as well to financially be strapped. If you have done everything, you have planned, you've decided to take a loan, you're going to combine that loan with a scholarship and so on and so forth, sometimes it may require that for the duration of your degree, financially in this family, we tighten up some belts. So now you have to have conversations with everyone who's going to be affected by that. You have to sit down with your wife and say, honey, I am going back to school. It's going to be for the good of the family. I've had conversations, I've done the planning, I've researched schools, yada yada, all of those things. So you need the support of your family, because without the support, it's going to make the decision very, very difficult. So, for example, when I went back to school, it required me to physically leave Eswatini and go back to South Africa. And I've been in South Africa since I was in grade 12. So I'm very familiar with the country. It's not an issue. But now I have children, two children, a daughter and a son. And they're both in high school, in school as well, primary school. Which meant that I had to rely on my family to take care of my children. So I had to sit down with the father of my child. I had to sit down with my mother. I had to sit down with my brother and actually say, I need your support. In as much as financially I have the muscle to go back to school, my children need to be taken care of on a daily basis. They need to be raised. I need to leave them with someone that I know I can trust to actually do the job that as well as I can, if not better. So if you are going to do that, even if you are a husband, you can't just leave your wife with the kids and say, I'm going back to school, it's going to be good for us. You need to understand that she's going to be single-handedly raising those children on her own while you are away at school. What will that do to your marriage, especially if you don't have the conversation prior to that? Remember, this is a therapy session. We need to be very, very careful in terms of our future plans not going to affect the here, the now in a negative way. So the point of, imagine if you now have to move to Taiwan or move to the United States or move to Ireland or wherever you have to move to go and do this course. And then when you come back in 4 years, everything that you were working hard for, the promotion, it's all gone. Children are gone, wife is gone, everyone is gone. So yes, you have the degree. Yes, you now have the promotion, but it's all for nothing because the people that you are working for are not there. Why? Because you never got their support to begin with. So some people may think, do I need permission? It may not be permission, but you do need to have a conversation that will leave you both understanding that one, you have to make some financial sacrifices. You have to make sacrifices of not having your partner with you for probably the next 4 years. Even if you are doing it online, there will be days whereby I cannot go out or I cannot go to that event or I cannot be seen with you here and there and there. Why? Because I have to study, because I have a target, I have a deadline, I have an exam, I have to travel to, to an exam center. I have to do this. I have to be part of my study group. But I may be here physically, but mentally and otherwise, I am somewhere else because why? I have to do this. So that requires a lot of sacrifice. You may be the one going back to school, but they are the ones that have to be without you for the duration of the time that you are there. So getting support for your family is very, very important. Make sure you have that. All right. So now you've done it, right? You've gotten the support of your family. You've figured out the financial stuff. You may not be happy with it, but you've figured it out. You've done your plan. You've found a university. You have decided whether you're going doing online or physically, but you've done the bulk of the work. Now it is time to make the jump. The scary part, the actual part where you have to walk into that university classroom and look at everyone, then realize that they are half your age. Well, not half your age, but a few years younger. And if you are moving to another country, it might require you to leave your 3-bedroom house, your 4-bedroom house, and move into a tiny space. So, for example, I had to leave a huge 3-bedroom house, Tabilisha, with a huge yard and everything, and my car to go live in a studio apartment, something I haven't done since I was in first year in 2008. I live in a studio apartment where when I'm on my bed, I can see my kitchen right over there. And that requires a lot of mental health adjustment to actually say and remember that why are you doing this? What are the sacrifices for? So when you are doing the physical change, for those who will be doing the physical change, you need a lot of support because mentally it goes through a lot. Leaving your car behind so that the family can use it means that wherever you are going, you might have to use public transport, something you haven't done in a very long time. So all of those things require what? A psychological adjustment. They need support. So I say find a therapist, find a support group, find people that you can talk to, people who've gone through the exact same thing. Because sometimes you may think for the first 2 months, I'm okay, this is good, I can do this. It's not about being spoiled. I've done this before. It's just about readjustment. It's just about sometimes there will come times whereby you may have to decide, if I have 100 rand, am I buying electricity or am I buying food? Why? Because I just paid off my school fees and I sent money home so that the kids are good, and I have 100 rand left, and I either have to buy electricity or buy food. I can't do both. That requires some form of mental health um, reconditioning and support, something that I have gone through, so I know exactly what I am talking about. You cannot do this without support. You cannot do this without talking to people who've gone through it. So when you walk into the class and you see an older person, odds are they are going through the same journey that you are. Have a conversation with them. Find out how they are doing it. And before you know it, you two senior citizens of the class will will come together and find a way to support each other because it is very, very important. And as a way of supporting you myself, I will make another video on how to actually live on a budget as an adult going back to school. You don't have to live on cornflakes and noodles because I don't think our old bodies can take that anymore. But I can definitely help you on some tips in terms of how do you live like a student again when you are older. So be on the lookout for that. All right. Well, we have come towards the end of the session, and there are a few things I just want to leave with you. Firstly, anxiety and fear are normal. It doesn't mean that you're not ambitious enough. It just means that you are also realistic. And sometimes being brave requires you to step out of reality and do the thing that scares you the most. So don't worry about the fear. That is normal. It just means you're a responsible adult that understands that going back to school will not be easy. So another thing is find the support. I cannot stress the support thing enough. You cannot do this on your own. You need help and you need people around you. And then lastly, watch videos of how other people did it. YouTube is, and social media as a whole, is a whole mine filled of information. Talk to people who are doing it. There are people that actually blog about just going back to school full time. This may be a 1 or 2 session for this channel, but there are people that actually have channels in terms of going back to school. How do I do it? What am I struggling with today? Bus schedules and all of those things. So follow those channels, follow those podcasts, and just have a community online whereby you can have conversations in terms of today, this is what I'm dealing with. Today, this is what I accomplished. Today, this is something that I want to share with you. And then lastly, please give yourself a break and try and celebrate everything. If you are able to go back to school and you did get the acceptance letter, please celebrate it because it is a milestone. There are so many people who've been wanting to go back to school and are still procrastinating. They're still taking their time. They're still trying to decide. And you have taken the jump. You have taken the leap. And as someone who has done it and is 2 years into it, I totally understand how difficult that is. And so I want you to celebrate it because you have done something great and amazing. Now that we've come to the end of the session, I want you to go into the comment section and just let me know, where are you in your plan or your yearning to go back to school? Are you in the planning phase? Are you still in the yearning phase whereby you haven't even started looking? Or have you moved on to the planning phase? Have you started applying? Are you waiting to hear? Would you like to know more about scholarships and resources? Where are you? Have you started talking to people who've walked the path before? The people who have actually gone back to school after working, what are they saying? And most importantly, what are your fears? What's the one concern that you have about going back to school? Let's have a discussion in the comment section and help each other out and start supporting each other. And before you know it, your dreams could be within reach. They're not as far as you think. And lastly, but most importantly, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And if there's someone who could benefit from today's discussion, please share this video with them and invite them to come into our comment section as well, so that people can also learn from you and you can all realize that we are not alone. Thank you for sticking with me thus far. See you in the next session. Love you. Bye.